Welcome to 1 Minute to Midnight. I'm Wilfred Cunningham. This week, fears grew surrounding the Chinese economy and its debt. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton extended their leads in the race for the US Republican and Democrat Party nominations, and the United States President, Barack Obama, weighed in with his opinion on the EU referendum in the UK. Of course, there are other things that have been happening. It emerged this week that suicide rates in the United States have been increasing since 1999. 13 in every 100,000 Americans take their own lives. Globally, suicide is the 10th most common cause of death, and it seems society is at a loss as to what to do. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Chinese economy. China's economy, often cited as being about to overtake the US in terms of size, has been rumoured to be near a downturn for some time. Articles about Chinese recession can be found from 6 months ago, 12 months ago, and further. The Chinese economic model uses two streams of economic activity to power the country. Firstly, an industrial base that relies on large-scale production to keep manufacturing cheap, and that can draw on China's huge pool of manpower that is comparatively far less expensive than in Europe or North America. And secondly, consumer spending, which is facilitated by a growing middle class and appetite for consumer goods. Although the country has moved towards further reliance on consumer spending, figures released on the 14th of April show it has now prioritized growth stimulated by its industry, overbalancing consumerism and manufacturing. Some fear that by prioritizing its industry in exchange for lower rates of growth in its newest sectors, long-term growth for the economy as a whole may become unstable. Although China's GDP grew 6.7% in 2016's first quarter, Beijing has used lending to boost growth, probably with the aim of stimulating its economy, bringing total net debt to $25 trillion. That number is, according to calculations by the Financial Times, 237% of gross domestic product, although the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, puts US debt at 249% of gross domestic product and average Japanese debt at near 400%. It is the fact that such a level of debt has been accumulated quickly that is drawing concern. At the end of 2007, Chinese debt was 148% of GDP. According to the BIS, debt in China accounts for a much higher proportion of national income than grouped data from emerging markets, who have an average debt of 175% of their GDP. This has led to fearful speculation surrounding the Chinese economic future, with some analysts stating that they predict a long period of stagnation, similar to that seen in Japan in the 1990s, whereas others have compared current conditions to those seen in the 2008 financial crisis in the United States and Europe, where major banks failed and interest rates plummeted. Well-known investor and philanthropist Georg Soros said this in January 2016.
2008, we are repeating it. It was a time of a financial crisis and a bear market. And you have the same condition today. But the source of the disequilibrium is different. In 2008, the root cause was the subprime crisis in America. Now the root cause is basically China.
Now, with the data from the first quarter of 2016, it seems many more are agreeing with Soros. China might yet stave off both catastrophe and a downturn, but perhaps such widely held fears are indicative of a shift that may reduce the size of Chinese manufacturing. Although it has begun to automate and robotize some industries, hourly manufacturing wages in China have risen by an average of 12% a year since 2001. The Economist argues that despite this, China has remained competitive in low-end production, thanks to its ability to control costs and because of a robust and effective infrastructure. However, the average factory worker in China earns $27.50 per day, compared with $6.70 in Vietnam. As China's economy has grown, so have the expectations of its people, which may mean it will have to shift at least some focus from manufacturing and assembly and move towards the slower growth of consumer spending and possibly more technical industries. Smaller regional workforces are largely keen to take on roles that have or will become too low paid for most Chinese provinces. Just as manufacturing industries have become too cost prohibitive in North America and Western Europe, they may so become too cost prohibitive in much of China. Whether it experiences an acute crisis or ongoing stagnation, it is difficult to imagine that other countries across the world won't be affected by even a modest slowdown. In the United States race to be the Republican or Democrat Party nominee, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton furthered their leads in New York primaries held on the 19th of April. Trump, standing for the Republican nomination, took 89 of 95 delegates and, more significantly, pushed his closest opponent, Ted Cruz, into third place. He now looks to be the most likely candidate to acquire the number of delegates needed to take the nomination, and if no candidate reaches the 1,237 delegates needed, it seems very likely that Trump will have more delegates than any other candidate. Clinton has 1,941 delegates, including 513 superdelegates, who can change allegiances but seem unlikely to do so, at least in significant numbers, while Clinton continues to lead. That number means she only needs 442 more delegates, whereas her opponent, Bernie Sanders, needs 1,192 more delegates, one more delegate than he currently has, including 38 superdelegates. Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island hold nominating contests on the 26th of April. If Trump and Clinton do well, and some pollsters are showing Clinton and Trump are set to win in the three states with polling data, their focus may be able to shift from winning their own nominations to scoring points off one another and readying for the presidential election. Some analysts believe both Trump and Clinton may struggle to attract those not already supporting them. Seen, at least initially, as being a radical, Trump has hinted on many occasions that his rhetoric and policies need to, and will, move to the center and adopt a more neutral tone.
It's easier for me to be presidential than for me to be doing what I've been doing for the last really 9 months. But at the right time, I will be so presidential, you will be so bored.
If he does secure the nomination, Trump will have to do just that. As a political veteran, Clinton may find it more difficult to move ground. After the 26th, on the 3rd of May, Indiana. On the 23rd of June, the people of the United Kingdom will vote in a referendum to decide whether the UK will leave the European Union or stay. Previously, there had been various calls in recent years for a referendum, with UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, whose central message is that the UK should leave Europe, garnering 4 million votes in the 2015 general election. Prior to the referendum, which was promised by Prime Minister David Cameron in 2013, on the condition his party, the Conservatives, win the 2015 election, the government renegotiated some existing agreements between the UK and the EU to appease some who opposed staying in Europe. These renegotiations were agreed on the 19th of February 2016 and dealt with issues of sovereignty, migration, and welfare controls, and a reduction of European legislation originating bureaucracy imposed on UK businesses. Many, however, felt that the renegotiations were either superficial or simply not deep enough to sway their opinion. The referendum has been mentioned in the UK media for some time and has gradually come to the front of domestic concern. Within Cameron's government, there are ministers of parliament for and against leaving the EU. Outside of the UK, it appears that most leaders and figureheads, such as French President François Hollande, the managing director of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, and most recently President of the United States, Barack Obama, support the UK remaining. Obama's comments and letter in London-based newspaper The Telegraph are important, as I would argue that the US presidency is the most influential voice for the British from outside of the UK, and more significant to many people than lots of the politicians and talking heads who are from Britain.
The United States wants a strong United Kingdom as a partner, and the United Kingdom is at its best when it's helping to lead a strong Europe.
Obama was criticised by some, such as London Mayor and potential Conservative Party leader Boris Johnson, for giving his opinion on the UK's place in the EU. However, he has hinted at such an opinion before, and it could be argued that he does have a legitimate interest in the UK staying or leaving the European Union. Despite this, the US president has angered many who are campaigning for the UK to leave, which may be in part because of the weight they know his opinions carry. Many arguments for remaining in the EU, including those voiced by Obama, centre around economics. However, while the campaign to leave the UK does counter economic arguments that leaving the EU would damage the economy, its main focus is on issues of sovereignty and controlling migration. Perhaps Obama's comments won't deter voters who are concerned with these issues more than growth or trade. Obama's stance may be pivotal in the referendum. He, and seemingly most other world leaders, appear to believe the UK should remain in the EU. Churchill wrote, "We are with Europe, but not of it. We are linked, but not combined. We are interested and associated, but not absorbed." 27 years later, Churchill welcomed the UK joining the European Economic Community. Perhaps fear of terrorism and a changing world economy will alter Europe anyway. So, until next time, goodbye, and try to remain calm.